And this helps explain in part why women gain weight in perimenopause and really have trouble opening up those fat-burning pathways. These are the things to watch for if you have leptin resistance that could be blocking your fat-burning pathways, preventing you from losing weight despite eating less and moving more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness coaching company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it's the hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or waking around the middle that seems to come out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet it feels like nothing is working. You're putting in all this effort and you're just moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel in control and at home in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today's podcast is amazing. We talked all about leptin and leptin resistance and how leptin can really tell your body, oh, we have enough food. We can burn the excess. We don't need to store. But when we go into leptin resistance, you're going to find out that our body is like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough energy. I must keep storing. And it slows down different processes in your body, affects your hormones. And your body is told to store because it doesn't think that it's getting enough, despite the fact that you're eating less and moving more. So this podcast I did with Coach Chelsea, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did and really help you connect the dots of, is this something that I am personally struggling with? We talked about the symptoms of it to help you identify that so that you can really take control of your life, open up those fat burning pathways so that your body isn't constantly telling you, hey, we need to store fat. So I hope you enjoy this as much as we enjoyed recording it. Welcome to today's episode. We are diving into a hormone that doesn't nearly get enough airtime. Leptin. Leptin is amazing. If you've ever felt like your body, isn't responding to your efforts around food or fat loss or fullness cues, leptin resistance could probably be at play. And this isn't just about, willpower or the calories out. It's about how your brain and your body talk to each other through your hormones. And leptin is your I'm full signal. It's what tells you that you've had enough. But when that message isn't getting through or it gets lost, those I'm full messages just aren't getting delivered. They're going straight to the junk mail. And so we want to really unpack what leptin is. We'll learn a little bit about its history, explore leptin resistance and how it develops, because this is very common. I've actually had a lot of people on social media asking me about this recently. So it's great that we're doing this podcast. And also why it's so freaking common, especially in women. And so what you can start to do to support better hormonal communication and metabolic health in general to help you, of course, lose weight and get this really under wraps for yourself. So we're going to get right into it. I have Coach Chelsea here with me today, and we're going to dive and really learn about what leptin is and the history behind it. So really briefly, leptin is one of the many hormones that we have in our body. It is a hormone produced by our fat cells, and it plays a key role in our energy balance, metabolism, and even reproductive function, which people don't realize. Its main role in the body is to help us regulate our metabolism. So energy in, energy out, how good our body is at burning calories. So Chelsea, tell us a little bit about the history of leptin before we dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about the history because it's actually really interesting. So in 1994, there was a group of researchers at Rockefeller University, and they were testing the hormones of mice. They made a really interesting discovery that there was a hormone that skinny mice had and that fat mice did not. From there, they were intrigued and they wanted to do a little bit more research. So they decided to test to see if they gave these mice, like the fat mice, if they gave them this hormone that the skinny mice had, if it would affect their weight. And it did, very quickly. They were so excited about the results of this and the potential impact that it could have on humans that they decided to name the hormone after the Greek word for lean or thin, which is leptos. So they decided to call it leptin. This was considered to be a really big discovery that they thought would be the key in fighting the obesity pandemic, or really epidemic. So the next steps were human trials. So they took lean and obese humans and gave them leptin. In their research, they found that there was no effect on the lean humans, and in the obese people, there was also no effect. It didn't work. So why not? This is because in humans, the average obese human has very high levels of leptin. There are very few cases of people who are born with leptin mutations, where they might not have leptin or they might not have the receptors for leptin. So giving these obese people leptin doesn't work. Because in humans, it is not a case of us not having leptins. And what they came to find out was that in these mice, they either did not have the leptin receptor, or their bodies just naturally did not create leptin, which explained why it worked in mice but not in humans. So when we look at this, I included some pictures for Steph to see here too, but you can see there was two different type of mice. So they had one called the OB mouse and then a DB mouse. And those were the type of mice that either had no leptin or no leptin receptors. And so when they gave these mice leptin, they saw huge improvements in the weight of these mice, but it didn't correspond to what we were seeing in humans because that wasn't actually the issue at play for humans. So we're going to dive into a little bit more about like how leptin actually works in the body and why we need it.
And these pictures of these mice, you guys, like they are big, like those are cats almost. Like those are some big mice. So to summarize that a little bit, it wasn't the fact that the mice didn't have enough leptin, but in humans, people who were overweight already had high levels of leptin. So it wasn't the leptin amount that was the issue. It's something called leptin resistance, which we're going to talk about today. And so leptin needs to be activated or stimulated by other hormones or inflammatory messengers in the body. And so leptin is going to be stimulated by a few different things. The first is insulin. When you eat, and of course, having those carbs, we're going to see that insulin rise because the job of insulin is to take the glucose, those sugars, and to give it to your cells so that your cells can then, use that energy, turn it into energy in our mitochondria so that our body can do the things that it needs to do, right? However, this can also stimulate the fat cells to release leptin, which will then signal fullness. So insulin goes up, leptin goes up, tells your body, hey, we have enough, we're good, we have enough fuel, and then you stop eating, which is great. But a lot of us are not like that, right? We'll have a whole can of Pringles. Like we do not have Pringles in our house for that specific reason, because I will crush that. We cannot have like little chocolates on the counter because, I will eat all those little chocolates until the bowl is empty. Like I am just like you guys. Like I am not like some weird anomaly with all these weird willpower things, right? And so you eat those. And so insulin goes up and it's supposed to leptin goes up and then you're supposed to say, oh, I'm full. How many of us actually experience that? Not a lot of us, right? We're never like, oh man, I could pass on like another 2 mini eggs. No, you're going to eat like 15 more. Then we have our TNF alpha. So this is tumor necrosis factor alpha. And don't let its like intense sounding name scare you. This TNF alpha is actually a normal part of our immune system. It is a pro-inflammatory cytokine, which means that it's a signaling molecule to your immune system to release when they detect danger from things like infection, injury, toxins, cellular stress. So if you went to our inflammation masterclass that I held, I think it was back in like January, I talked about this stuff a lot. And so this inflammatory cytokine can then increase leptin production. So we see the inflammation go up from this cytokine, and then we see leptin go up. And then that also tells us that we're full, right? And this is especially prevalent if we are obese or we're dealing with chronic inflammation, which if you have been following me for any amount of time, I talk about inflammation a lot because this is a big issue that we see that is blocking our fat burning pathways. However, this TNF alpha is also going to interfere with leptin signaling in the brain, contributing to leptin resistance. So more leptin is being made because the inflammation goes up, leptin's being released, but our brain is like not understanding this. It's not as effective. And then we have like a negative feedback loop that we don't want in our bodies, especially if our goal is to activate our fat burning pathways. So we have more inflammation. We see this TNF alpha go up. We see leptin go up. Brain is just like, da 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 da. Like, when you're like nagging your kids and they're so good at ignoring you, This is kind of what's happening. We are really good at ignoring leptin, really good. Then we have estrogen. Estrogen is going to enhance leptin sensitivity, which is good, right? We want to sense this, feel full, and then be like, oh, yes, we're great. We don't need to eat anymore. However, when estrogen goes down, we become more resistant naturally, just like we become more insulin resistant. So those two together, not super great, right? Because if insulin goes up, we see that leptin goes up, but then we have less sensitivity to leptin. So we have all this leptin happening in our body and we're not really like understanding that it's there. We're supposed to stop eating, right? And so this is why we see in a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause, or when they're suffering with low estrogen, that we have a bigger appetite, that we see more fat storage, right? And so this becomes a big issue for the women that we work with. And then we also see, of course, cortisol, my favorite topic. So cortisol and stress, that elevated cortisol is going to impair leptin sensitivity as well, particularly in an area in our brain called the hypothalamus. So we know that cortisol is going to promote increased fat storage. It's going to raise leptin. But again, when there's that resistance in place, our brain isn't responding well to it. Like we aren't aware that leptin is there. Remember, that chronic stress comes from under eating. It comes from over exercising, not getting enough sleep, dieting for too long, too often, cutting our carbs, being go, 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 loving our job. But it is very, like I love my job. It's so fulfilling and it brings me so much joy, but you're always quote unquote on, right? You're always like on and in meetings and podcasting and creating content and all those things. So you are on. And as much as I enjoy it, my body perceives that as a stress. Then you have trauma in the past and you've got grief and you've got deadlines and you've got financial stuff and then all the things going on in the world. Like there's so much stuff. We are constantly stressed and we are super not aware of it. So if you pair the stress with a declining estrogen, struggling with blood sugar control, the inflammation, you just have super high levels of leptin and your body's just like, la da 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 da. We don't care. We're really good at ignoring our parents, right? This is kind of the situation that we're in. So Chelsea, what are some of the roles of leptin? Because now that we know that it's very easy to become leptin resistant in the world that we live in today, with our hormones, the stress that we're experiencing, the inflammation, all the things that we always talk about on this podcast, what is the role of leptin? Like what is it supposed to do when we have enough and we're actually like listening to that signal?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because that's actually been such a huge theme in the conversations that I've been having with women this week. In that, like, they're just like, I just need to get back on track. I just can't stop snacking. I just can't stop. Like, the cravings are intense and I know what I need to do, but I just can't do it. And like, they're often very much focused on like the willpower or the motivation that they think they need. And I'm like, well, let's back up a step and actually look at what's happening hormonally 100%. In your body, because this might just not be all in your head. Like, this isn't just like what you think you need to do. It's like that your body's probably not working optimally so that it's not going to help you do these things naturally.
Oh yeah, like we have like a little snack bowl in our house, and right now Taylor has those Reese's Eggies, the chocolate peanut butter Eggies, and like he's gotten the big bags at Walmart because you can't find small bags. They literally don't make them. I would just like to point that out, at least not where I live. We've looked everywhere, only the big bags. And they're only available at Easter time. So he's been buying some and stocking that bowl. And like, I need to learn to not just stand there and eat them, but it's really hard, right? And it's like, you eat so many calories in those, it adds up so quickly, but you just can't stop. You just can't stop. And then you look at my hormones on my Dutch test and you're like, this all makes sense.
It's like, Steph, we need more cruciferous vegetables.
I had my broccoli. I had regular eggs this morning, and I had broccoli, like microgreens this morning. So look at me go.
Ooh,
yeah.
On the eggs.
So look at me. I'm doing the things.
Okay.
I am. I'm being, on track. I'm following the plan. But those eggies can just sneak in there sometimes.
They can fit in there too sometimes. Okay, so let's talk about the roles of leptin. So as we know, leptin is that I'm full signal in our body. That's one of its main roles, and it absolutely does perform that task. So the reason for that is that it is because it helps us to regulate our energy balance. Its job is to send messages from our fat cells to the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, to let it know that the body has had enough food, and it then again activates that like, I'm full, I'm good, we don't need any more food signal. One of the other interesting roles, and Steph, you're going to love this one because I know you've been on a bit of a mitochondria kick too in terms of inflammation, but it actually promotes mitochondrial biogenesis. And so basically what that means is it helps with the production of new mitochondria, specifically in our muscles. And this is one of the ways that our fat burning pathways can become blocked. If leptin isn't getting its job done effectively, we are then not creating new and efficient mitochondria so that that energy is not shuttling into our muscle cells as efficiently as we want it to. Leptin also plays a huge role in the thyroid. We know that our thyroid regulates our metabolism, and leptin helps signal the brain, specifically that hypothalamus, that there's enough energy available to keep things running, including our thyroid hormone production. So we can look at it kind of like this. Leptin signals the hypothalamus, we are well fed and we are safe. The hypothalamus then produces TRH, which is thyrotropin releasing hormone. It then sends a message to our pituitary gland to release TSH, which is the hormone that we're mostly familiar with when we think about our thyroid, which is our thyroid stimulating hormone. TSH then tells the thyroid to make T4 and T3, and these are your metabolism regulating hormones. These are the active forms of that thyroid hormone. Now, what can happen in this system when leptin is dysregulated, specifically in cases of leptin resistance? And we'll explain a little bit more about leptin resistance shortly. The brain does not get that signal that there is enough energy. So our body responds by conserving energy. Hello, fat storing. Slowing down thyroid output and reducing that conversion of T4 to T3. So we can almost think of leptin acting like a nutritional gatekeeper for our thyroid function. If your body senses you're in a state of energy emergency, whether that's due to undereating, overexercising, or that chronic inflammation, our thyroid hormone production is going to slow down, even if our thyroid gland itself is healthy. Now, one of the other interesting roles with leptin is that it also influences our reproductive axis. So leptin modulates our gonadotropin releasing hormone, and our body uses that to influence two of the main hormones that kind of stimulate reproduction in our body. So that's our LH and our FSH. So our luteinizing hormone and our follicle stimulating hormone. And these are essential signals for stimulating reproduction. If our body is not responding well to leptin, that is going to dramatically decrease fertility rates. Again, we've got to remember that leptin sends that message to our hypothalamus that the body has enough energy reserves to support reproduction. So in this case, it's telling it, I'm well fed, I'm safe, and yes, we can reproduce because we're safe. If our leptin levels are too low, the body can perceive that as a state of starvation or energy deficiency, and it can down-regulate reproductive hormones to conserve energy. However, on the flip side of this, if our leptin levels are too high, it can contribute to things like insulin resistance and inflammation, which can negatively impact our ovarian function. So it's going to continue to impact our estrogen and progesterone, and when we have that low leptin, it can cause low estrogen and progesterone, affecting our ovulation and also the implantation if reproduction were to occur.
So this is very important for you guys to understand. So you may have a lot of leptin like in your body, right? Like from all the things that we talked about, there could be like insulin resistance, there can be a lot of inflammation, there can be a lot of stress. That's going to increase your leptin, right? But if we are leptin resistance, right? If we are struggling with leptin resistance, our body is told we don't have enough. We need to store. We don't have enough energy. And what happens with that is thyroid function slows down, which your body then burns less calories. We also see that if your leptin is high and you have this leptin resistance where your body isn't interpreting it, we see more instances of insulin resistance. We see more inflammation. Those things block your fat storing pathways and overstimulate that, or your fat burning pathways, and overstimulates your storing pathways. And so then what happens is your body is constantly being told, we don't have enough, we don't have enough, we don't have enough, except leptin is there trying to tell you, we do have enough, but the signaling is off. And so you can still keep cutting calories and doing a ton of exercise and eating super healthy and cutting your carbs and fasting and doing all the things, and you won't lose weight because your body is constantly being told, we don't have enough, we are not safe, we need to store, thyroid function goes down, you burn less calories, inflammation goes up, insulin resistance goes up, blocking fat burning, overstimulating that fat storing pathway. We see that's going to negatively influence your estrogen. That's going to negatively influence your progesterone, which is going to result in even more insulin resistance, even more inflammation, even more leptin resistance. And you have this cycle that just keeps going and going and going. And you think eating less, moving more is going to help me. But it's not, because that's going to increase your stress, tank your hormones more, result in more inflammation, which is just going to make this cycle worse and worse and worse. And this is the kind of stuff where people make big mistakes when they're coaching others or when they're trying to figure out their own situation, because they're like, well, this is how I was taught, right? And that's very superficial. And the things that we're taught early on in our careers are very, living in a vacuum, ideal world. We aren't living in an ideal world. We've never had so much like stress, access to stress, cell phones, toxins, crazy dieting we've done in the past, more anxiety, more grief, more trauma. We're so aware of these things. We're lonelier than ever before. Like, we are in a place where this is constantly happening. And so we think that the answer must be eat less, move more, but we are not in a situation where it's that simple anymore. And so when you see the things on the internet where it's like, oh, then you must not be in a calorie deficit. I get that on my stuff all the time. Like I posted today, I start gaining weight when I drop below 1,500 calories. You're like, oh, well, you must not be in a calorie deficit. You must be lying with your tracking. Oh, you must not be as active as you are. It's because you're aging and you're not being as active. I'm like, no, this is the stuff that's happening. And so this is just one example of how this negative feedback loop happens. Your hormones are going to influence it. Your blood sugar is going to influence it. Inflammation, stress, your liver, detoxification, certain enzymes, your androgens, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. There is so much. And so this is why we are so big on teaching you about these things and sharing this out there, because there are so many people who are literally making themselves more sick in their pursuit of trying to lose weight. And then they don't realize that when we can't get into fat burning, yes, we want to lose weight. And I get that. But also the other consequence is we're not eating up the dead cells. Like when we're in that fat burning pathway, we're able to clean up dead cells that are increasing inflammation, increasing our cancer risk, increasing cardiovascular disease risk, all the things that are taking people from this planet way too soon. And so we don't realize that our discomfort with our weight right now and the very things that we're doing are literally taking years off our life later. And yes, being overweight, super not healthy, right? Like we don't want to be at a certain too high of body fat percentage. And I get that. But if we are constantly doing these kinds of things that are making these cycles worse, you are going to do more damage in the long run. So it's understanding how to work with your body to be healthy. And like, this is like the whole premise of the book that I'm working on right now too, is like helping you really understand this stuff all in one place. As I get it, there's so much information, but this is like really understanding why we do what we do, why when you book a consultation call, we like ask you a bajillion questions and then we give you answers, but we're also like, but we also have to realize like we need to see how your body responds, because how it responds is going to give us a good inkling as to like what's going on here. And we need to do some assessments. Like these are the things that are going to help you feel unstuck and actually lead you down the path that you want to be down. So side tangent. Now let's also talk about how leptin is affected by hormonal changes, because as we go through perimenopause and menopause, our 30s, 40s, 50s, our hormones can be all over the place. You're looking at postpartum. We're looking at women who've been dealing with estrogen dominance their entire life. We see women going through perimenopause in their 30s, right? Going through early perimenopause. This is a thing. We're going to do a whole podcast on that soon. So understanding how hormones are going to impact all these systems also matters. So let's talk about leptin and hormonal changes specifically. Leptin and other hormones in our body are always going to affect each other in numerous ways. Like, you can't isolate the body. Like everything works together. Like your heart is reacting because of hormones and psychological things and, different enzymes, food, sleep. There's so many things, right? So we can't hyper isolate things. We need to look at everything together, and it's going to affect things like metabolism, appetite, weight, hormone balance, right? So because leptin is a key energy regulating hormone, other hormonal shifts are going to play a role in symptoms like the weight gain, the appetite changes, the hot flashes, metabolic changes. Is our body good at burning calories, right? Is our fat burning pathway even open? And so estrogen decline, let's talk about this one first, alters leptin sensitivity. We already touched on that a little bit. Estrogen helps our body be able to stop ignoring leptin. It's like, those rare times when you call on your kid and they're like, yes, mom. And you're like, oh, this is so nice. Estrogen does that, right? But then when estrogen starts to decline, this is where your kids just like video games, texting on their phone, ignoring you. My husband's probably like, Steph, you do this to me sometimes. Yes, I do. And this can be when we start experiencing low estrogen. So we can see this postpartum. We can see this in like later stages of perimenopause, but we can also see this in people in their 30s and 40s, right? And this is where we start to see leptin sensitivity decrease. We're not being able to, our body's not perceiving that we have enough. So we see the increase in hunger. We start seeing the cravings. We see fat storage, particularly around the belly. And this helps explain in part why women gain weight in perimenopause and really have trouble opening up those fat burning pathways when they haven't changed much, right? It's like, I haven't changed anything and I started gaining weight. And it's like, yes, but estrogen's declining. And so now we have all these cascading things that are influencing your fat burning pathways just because estrogen declines. So you might not be choosing different things, but internally things are happening that are causing different outcomes. Then we have progesterone. Progesterone has a mild appetite suppressing effect. So when progesterone levels fluctuate or they drop, leptin signaling can be thrown off, and that again can lead to more hunger and fat gain as well. And then we just have increased leptin resistance in our midlife. So perimenopausal women will often develop leptin resistance. We see this all of the time. And this is where your leptin levels are high, but the brain, again, just ignoring, just being our kids, not listening to mom, right? So this can lead to more hunger and cravings, especially for carbs, where people are like, I just want the chocolate. I want that chocolate covered croissant. I want the ice cream. I want all the things, right? We see fat accumulation, particularly in the belly, and then struggling to lose weight despite being dialed in nutrition, despite exercising well. So Chelsea, how does leptin affect hormonal symptoms specifically? Because we got to tie all this together as well.
Okay. As we talked about earlier, leptin plays that role in our reproductive health. So leptin really helps to regulate our menstrual cycle and reproduction because it influences that GnRH, which is that gonadotropin releasing hormone, which then plays a role in our FSH and our LH. As leptin resistance develops, this disrupts that hormone feedback loop, contributing to things like possible irregular periods, skipped ovulation, and even worsening perimenopausal symptoms. So let's dive into some of those symptoms and how leptin plays a role in that. Let's look at hot flashes. When we have high leptin levels, which are quite common in perimenopausal women, we may see increased inflammation, which again, we know is part of the menopausal transition, and this can be linked with more frequent and intense hot flashes. The other thing that leptin plays a role in is our sleep disturbances. One of the things that we don't realize is the huge role that leptin plays in our circadian rhythm. So poor sleep increases ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and disrupts our leptin signaling. This is going to make it so much harder to regulate our appetite and for then our metabolism to do the jobs that it's supposed to be doing in terms of how it's utilizing that energy that we're providing it. We know that so many perimenopausal and menopausal women are really struggling with their sleep, and this can really cause that leptin imbalance that's occurring. So again, it's not just leptin impacting these hormones, but it's also the changes in these hormones that is then impacting our leptin as well.
So we talked a little bit about like the fat burning pathways, the storing pathways. And so we know that leptin is going to have a big role in both of those things. And so, like I mentioned, when our leptin is going to tell us that we are full, that we have enough, right? We need to store. And so when we are having all that leptin and we're resistant to it, we're just never getting that signal, despite the fact that we are, eating less, moving more, right? And so we also know we're going to see that leptin is going to turn on that fat burning pathway in muscles, in our liver cells. And it's really going to encourage our body to burn calories, to break down fat cells, which we all really struggle with, right? However, when we're not getting that signal from leptin, we're going to see that activity is impaired. So less fat burning, way more fat storage. Our body's not good at burning calories. And those three things together alone, you're like, that doesn't sound like I can lose weight very easily. No, you can't. So this is one of the factors that can really keep those fat burning pathways blocked and those storing pathways like really overstimulated. And so we need to pay attention to this more because, again, you can do all the right things and still really struggle. And with that growth and storage pathway, I do want to say it is not a bad thing. Like, we do need to be able to go into it to build muscle, to repair cells. Like, we want that. But it's when we're stuck in that state for too long, when it's overstimulated, and when we're experiencing leptin resistance and really high leptin levels, that's where we can see this becoming overactive. And then we start storing that fat way more than we want. That growth storage pathway is really, really turned on. And that's where it becomes a problem. And that's where that like low estrogen we know is also going to support fat burn, or estrogen supports fat burning and kind of keeps in check that storage pathway. And so when estrogen goes down, this is already kind of, we're seeing that shift a bit. And then that leptin resistance is also going to contribute to that, right? So people are like, oh, it's estrogen. And it's like, no. Estrogen was like kind of keeping everything in check for you, keeping your blood sugars more stable. It was keeping leptin, like, so your body could actually respond to it and get that signaling. She was helping you build muscle, maintaining muscle. And so she was like that A player that was just keeping the whole team together. And then when she leaves, we get pissed off. Quite literally, our mood goes to crap. But like, we get angry because we're like, stupid menopause, like, this is the problem. And it's like, you should be thanking her for keeping you together this long. Because she was like that person, that MVP, you know, and the MVP gets injured and everyone's mad at the team. And it's like, well, the coach probably should be working with the team, making all the other team players do what they're supposed to do, improving the communication there. So yes, it sucks when estrogen declines, but it just exposes what was going on under the surface. So you can't get totally pissed off at her because she did her best for as long as she could. And now we have to start like addressing the rest of the team to get things moving properly and, you know, getting you to where you want to be. So Chelsea, let's talk a little bit about the actual leptin resistance and how this actually happens, the problems with it, all the things.
Yeah. And I was just going to say with the fat burning and the fat storage pathways, I always refer it back to like our nervous system and how we want our nervous system to be really, really good at switching between those two zones, right? Like almost like gas pedals. We want to be really good at tapping into our sympathetic, like our go, 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 go nervous system when we need it. And then we also want to be really good at tapping into that rest, digest, and recover state so that we're getting a really good balance. It's the same with our fat burning and our fat storing pathways. We want our body to be really adaptive and good at using both. But in many cases, much like with our nervous system, we're getting stuck in that one pathway, and then we have a very, very hard time tapping into that other one. Okay, so you have heard us mention this a couple of times now. Let's actually dive into leptin resistance and what it is. So leptin resistance is when the body no longer responds effectively to leptin. Chronically elevated levels of leptins, and this is very similar to insulin resistance, your body keeps pumping out leptin, but your receptors are no longer answering that call. So like that kid, like your kid's like stuck on their video games and they're totally ignoring you. You can almost imagine you're driving a car and your fuel tank is actually full, but your gas gauge is stuck on empty. Even though you have plenty of gas, your car's dashboard keeps flashing warnings, low fuel, we need to refill. Get to the gas station. This is exactly what happens with leptin resistance. Your brain doesn't realize you have enough stored energy, so it keeps telling you to eat more, even when you don't actually need to. So to fix this gas gauge, there are a couple of things that we need to do. We need to really focus on reducing that inflammation. So quality food, nutrient-dense food, focusing on a primarily anti-inflammatory diet, prioritizing quality and the quantity of our sleep, so getting really good sleep, and managing our stress. All of these types of things are going to help your brain to recognize that leptin signal again. So hunger and metabolism can work as they should, because one of the great things about leptin resistance is that we can reverse it. It doesn't mean that your body is always going to be resistant to leptin. We can do a lot of work to help to improve that signaling. So if we think back to those mice that we talked about at the beginning and how they kind of discovered leptin in the first place, this is exactly why when they tried to recreate their study on mice and humans at Rockefeller University, it didn't work. Because it wasn't an issue of the humans not having leptin. It was that we had too much and our brain wasn't answering the call of that leptin. So Steph, you're going to cover a couple of things in terms of like what this can feel like and look like in your body.
And I do want to mention, like, on the stress aspect, like, we can't remove all stress from our life. right? And so like there's things that you can do to really improve that, like making sure you're eating enough food, not skipping breakfast anymore, making sure that you are eating food in the right order to reduce like the stress on your body that way, getting enough fiber, getting enough sleep, but counteracting stress in terms of like, what are you consuming on social media? Like this is a really big one. Like I think it's terrible because I don't necessarily always know what's going on in the world, because I during the pandemic, I had to remove like that kind of stuff from my social media because it was like really, it was not good for me. So I still don't know what's really going on halfway in the world. Taylor usually keeps me in the loop. I don't really know. So those are just things that you need to be aware of. Doing deep breathing throughout the day. It might sound super like overrated. Like how much can breathing actually help me? So much. So like actually slowing down before you go to eat. Try taking like 10 really slow, deep breaths. When you're going to switch tasks, like at work, sit for a minute instead of rushing and just like take 10 really slow, deep breaths, like 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Those little things actually make a huge difference to teach your body to not have your foot just on the go brake all the time, to be able to switch, because so many of us just have had our foot to the pedal all the way to the floor for so long that it is just freaking stuck. Like we need to actively take time to switch that. And it's really uncomfortable at first and it might feel super stupid. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is a waste of time. If you don't have literally a minute to slow down, like we have big problems. That's a big sign that like we probably have some work to do. So what are some common symptoms of leptin resistance? Like, how are you like, okay, this sounds like something I might be struggling with. It makes sense. Is this me? These are the things to watch for if you have leptin resistance that could be blocking your fat burning pathways, overstimulating that growth pathway, preventing you from losing weight despite eating less and moving more. Chronically elevated levels of leptin, this would be through blood work, constantly hungry or frequent food cravings even after you've eaten, weight gain, especially around the middle, difficulty losing weight despite dieting and exercise, a slow metabolism or feeling like you're stuck in that fat storing mode, poor satiety. So like it takes big portion sizes for you to feel full. You have insulin resistance, or we're struggling with blood sugar swings, poor sleep and disrupted circadian rhythms. So like this is where, you're waking up at nighttime, struggling to fall asleep. You're still tired in the morning, struggling to wake up, even though you were in bed for a long time. So those are all big signs that like this is probably happening. And a lot of these sound like perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms, right? This is because everything is so interconnected. And so we need to figure out what is causing a lot of these issues. And usually it's a combination of things. And it's usually never that you're not like trying hard enough, right? Like it's never like, oh, I'm not working out hard enough. I'm not eating little enough. Like that's not typically what we're seeing. Like I could probably count on my hands, like how many people we've had that were actually eating like too much. And it was just more of like an inflammation, making sure we're like choosing the right food choices. Like it's not very common that we talk to women who are like eating enough or so high over where we're like, oh, okay, like the issue is just you're just eating too much. Usually there's other stuff going on too, because sometimes you're eating too much because of this kind of stuff, right? So we need to really understand what is the root cause here. So Chelsea's going to take us through, if you have leptin resistance, or you've been told that you do, or you think that you do, what are the best things that you can do so that way your fat burning pathways can open up? That way we're not sending that storage signal all the time. We are bringing that inflammation down so your body can actually release fat and is told, hey, we have enough. We don't need to store. That's the signal we want. We want our body to be like, oh, we don't need to store. We can get rid of this stuff. We have enough. Because most of us are not getting that information from our body. Our body is not being told this. So let's break it down. What can we do?
Okay, so the key to reversing leptin resistance, or even just improving our leptin signaling, is going to involve a couple of different things. The first thing that we really want to focus on is balancing our blood sugar and our insulin. So eating our meals in a particular order, like Steph mentioned before. We always want to make sure that we are starting our meal with our veggies and our proteins and then adding in our carbs at the end. We also want to make sure that we are avoiding large blood sugar swings, right? So those are going to make our leptin resistance worse. So going for walks after meals, doing those types of things to help to regulate our blood sugar. incorporating resistance training, sleeping, all of those types of things that we've talked about are going to be so beneficial in terms of helping with this. And then really focusing when we are building our meals on our protein, our fiber, and our healthy fats with meals to support that stable glucose level. So Steph's going to dive into some more specific kind of nutrition strategies for us.
Yeah, so when we're talking about like blood sugar, because we know if we're having large blood sugar swings, we're going to see that we're going to struggle with leptin resistance. This does not mean eating low carb. Like, I want to put that in the sky permanently in writing. Eat your carbs. And I know a lot of people are probably like, carbs, blood sugar, they don't go together. That's a bad thing. Why would you ever do that? I'm going to get fat. I use my CGM, blah, blah, blah. Cool. I hear you. I understand you. But when we're measuring our blood sugars, there is so much that's going to influence that. If you slept poorly the night before, worse blood sugars. More stress, worse blood sugars. If you had a more challenging workout the day before, that can also influence your blood sugar control because of inflammation that's going up. Hydration levels can affect blood sugar because we're going to see more inflammation. If we have been sick in the last 3 weeks, also struggling there. If you have been eating low carb for a very long time, or you did keto for a long time, guess what? You probably made yourself insulin resistant. I'm actually going to make a podcast on keto and how this happens very soon in the future. I have the script and I did the research and we're going to talk about it. But this is where we need to understand blood sugar is not just affected by food. Because if you are stressed out, your body goes, I need more energy to deal with this stress, despite the fact that you're sitting there, haven't gone for a walk. All you're doing is doom scrolling and being pissed off, looking at other people on the internet and whatever certain people who are, doing things or tweeting out there and making things go crazy, and there's financials and whatever, right? Like those things, despite not eating, despite not having carbs, despite fasting, despite eating healthy, if you are stressed out from those things and under eating, right? What happens is your body goes, oh, we need energy. So guess what happens? It tells your liver, hey, we need you to bust out some sugar here. And if this happens for too long, it actually breaks down muscle mass, turns it into sugar in your liver, and will actually provide it to your cells that way. And so you will see a spike in blood sugars and an increase in insulin resistance despite not eating, despite not having carbohydrates, just from stress alone. Carbohydrates help bring those stress levels down to regulate blood sugar. So when we are looking specifically on how to eat to support your blood sugar, to support your insulin, we need to, first of all, have protein at every single meal. We're aiming for at least 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal to support you from, actually feeling full. And this is going to help open up those fat burning pathways. We also want to make sure that when we are doing this, we are prioritizing fiber and our non-starchy vegetables. Fiber is going to help regulate leptin and insulin, because when it comes to your blood sugar control, the reason we get spikes is because things digest very quickly. It comes out of our stomach quickly. Our body breaks it down quickly. So we want to slow down how quickly food empties our stomach. The way we do this is by having most of our protein and our veggies first, because those are harder to digest. They take longer to digest, so we're not going to have as big of a blood sugar spike. Blood sugars are supposed to come up when you eat. So not all blood sugar rises are bad. This is supposed to happen. So what it does is it comes up. It doesn't peak as high. It stays at that moderate level for a while, and then it slowly comes down. This is what we want. So we want to have most of our higher fiber options, veggies and protein first, then dip into our carbs. And so this is where, what if I'm having a wrap or a sandwich? Cool. Have some veggies and dip first. Have a side salad first. Have a hard boiled egg and some cheese, and then have it. We overcomplicate it so much more than it needs to be. It's okay, if I'm having a concoction meal, like a stew, a lasagna, a casserole, sandwich, wrap, all those things, how can I incorporate some veggies or protein first? That's all you got to do. Super simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it. Then we want to make sure that we are eating every 4 to 5 hours, because if you are snacking all day, for little grazers, or as Coach Carrie Anna likes to say, nibblers, when she told me that, I was crying. I thought it was so funny. So if you're a nibbler and you're just constantly snacking during the day, even if it's not very much, your blood sugar just stays elevated all day. And that's not good, because insulin resistance goes up. Right? We see insulin go up, increase in insulin resistance, increase in inflammation. We're never getting into that fat burning pathway, because insulin's going to push us in that growth pathway. So actually having meals 4 to 5 hours apart Very important. Then have like a snack if you need to that's smaller but higher in protein, right? Has some fat in it, maybe some veggies, right? This is where those things, the order of eating and timing really makes a difference. Having that breakfast in the morning, super important. Otherwise, we're stressed out. And guess what? Blood sugar goes up despite the fact that you're not eating. If it's going to go up anyways, may as well eat, right? It'll help support your hormones. You'll feel better. It'll keep you full for longer. That way, when you do go to eat, you're not like ravenous, right? And you can actually control yourself. So very, very important. We want to pay attention to the kinds of carbohydrates that we're having. So we want to reduce really processed carbohydrates and sugar. So this is those peanut butter Reese eggs, we don't eat those. We can have them sometimes if we're going to have it right after a meal, right? But we're not going to be just having those on their own. No bueno. Even having fruit on their own, right? Like I always do like some walnuts or pecans first, and then I have my apple or my berries or whatever I'm having, right? There's fiber in there. I have some good like omega-3s and stuff from my nuts, and that's good. It's great. It's a great opportunity and a great option, but we need to be aware that if we're having the donuts, which I love, they're my favorite. This is why I have a donut mug. It's my favorite dessert. If you're having the chocolates, if you're having the chips, that's going to really blunt our hypothalamic leptin signaling. So we're not going to get that signal. Remember how I said, like, I can sit there and eat the eggies and I never get told that I'm full? This is what we're talking about. So, and this is where like fructose, and we're not talking about fruit. Like someone posted this, they're like, fructose is terrible for leptin. I'm like, we're not talking about fruit. We're talking about like high fructose corn syrup. This is like, your carameled like candies and your gummy bears and your chocolates and all those things. That's what we're looking at. And that's going to affect and interfere with leptin's ability to regulate your appetite and metabolism. So have your fruit. No one got fat from eating grapes, have your fruit. Then also timing your carbohydrates can be really helpful in this time as well. So timing more of your carbohydrates around workouts, pre and post, super amazing. But this is where, working with a coach, we really help you with this, because I had a client, and I know she listens, so she'll know who she is, but we were paying attention to her carbohydrates, and we really found that sweet spot at lunchtime, because if we went up just like 10 grams higher than where she was, we found that was, she'd be tired in the afternoon, really struggling. So we had to pay attention to the amount that she was having at certain meals as well to really help support her and her blood sugars and her energy, because otherwise we were dealing with this kind of stuff. And then we have incorporating our anti-inflammatory fats. So omega-3s, very hard to get in our everyday diet now because we don't eat that way anymore. So this is going to be found in like wild caught fish, chia seeds, flax seeds. They're going to reduce your inflammation. And we know when we're reducing inflammation, we open fat burning pathways. We improve our leptin sensitivity. So our body is not told, hey, we need more. Instead, it's like, hey, we have enough. We can burn what we have. That's what we want, right? We want to pay attention to monounsaturated fats like avocados, great options, olive oil, nuts. Those are all going to support your body in being better at burning calories by decreasing that inflammation. And then we want to limit industrial seed oils and trans fats because they can worsen your inflammation and your leptin resistance. And your body is told, we must store, despite the fact that you're eating less, despite the fact that you're doing all the right things. So this is where yes, calories and macros, super helpful. But what is contributing to those matters even more, right? Like food quality does matter here, because you could have two people having, let's say there were twins or whatever, exact same person. They could have the same calories, the same macros. Depending what their food is actually made out of, one person will have blocked fat burning and hormonal issues and leptin resistance and blood sugar issues versus the person who is doing more of the whole foods, isn't going to have the high fructose corn syrup, the seed oils and all those things, right? So we want to make sure that you are also aware of that. This is why macro coaching, it's great in theory. But this is why we review our diaries with our clients. This is why we look at what their food that they're having and creating some, let's try and swap this out. Let's try and add this in somewhere. And so we're focusing on slowly squeezing out some of those things and really favoring the whole foods and stuff like that, because we're never going to not have that stuff, right? It's always going to be around. So it's learning, okay, when would be the best time to have those things for me, right? Based on you and your results and all that kind of stuff. And still support my blood sugar, still support the leptin, still, help you reach those goals, because you are still going to have some of those things, but it's understanding when to have them, how much to have, how often, and what you should be prioritizing most of the time. Like this stuff is actually going to make a big deal. So Chelsea already touched a little bit on like the meal timing stuff, but I'll let her dive in a little bit more. And then also considerations for HRT, because this is also something that we talk about.
Yes. So as Steph was saying, like so many of us are constantly eating throughout the day. Every time we walk past the cupboard or a pantry or a fridge, we're grabbing something to eat. This is keeping those fat storing pathways open and our fat burning pathways blocked, simply because our body is never getting the opportunity to tap into our stored fat because we are constantly providing our body with energy. So it never needs to break anything down because we're just constantly giving it new energy to utilize. So we really want to avoid frequent snacking. So as Steph said, aiming to have meals 4 to 5 hours apart. And I have clients who are like, but I'm trying, and I'm like, we're making this work for you in your lifestyle. So I'm like, for myself, I eat before my workout and then I eat breakfast. There's not 3 or 4 hours between that, but that's okay because my body is utilizing that energy that I've provided it in my workout, and then I'm fueling my workout fueling my body post-workout with the nutrients that it needs to help with recovery. So it's really about the consistency piece here and doing what actually works for you in your lifestyle, but aiming to have those larger windows in between meals. The other thing is we want to try and give our body about a 10 to 12 hour window where we're not eating, right? So we're keeping our eating window about 10 to 12 hours and then having 10 to 12 hours where we don't eat. And that is just because that is going to help to improve our leptin signaling. But again, it's also it's allowing our body to tap into that stored fat so that it can use those resources. And then it is also helping to make sure that our body can perform these processes that it's supposed to be performing. We can have that cell cleanup that occurs, that autophagy, all of those types of things. Now, the other piece of this, and we've already talked about it, but that protein-rich breakfast is so important, because it really helps to support your circadian rhythm, your leptin balance, and it helps to reduce some of those cravings that you can experience later in the day. Now, the other piece of this is you could potentially, if it's an option for you, explore something like HRT. So if you are really struggling with those symptoms of low estrogen or low progesterone, and you are noticing that it is causing major effects in how you are feeling, how your body is working, all of those types of things, then HRT can be a really great option. Estrogen therapy in particular may help to restore your leptin sensitivity for some women, because it can help to improve our insulin function, because we know that estrogen and insulin have a really, really tight relationship, and then also that fat burning activation too.
And so I do want to talk a little bit about like HRT here in terms of like some people take it and feel terrible. And so I was talking with some other friends and stuff who also own businesses, and we were talking about this and how not enough people understand that the health of your cells matter for how well you will respond to HRT. Because if your body isn't good at absorbing stuff, if it isn't good at breaking stuff down, if you aren't good at eliminating things, HRT can actually make stuff worse in some people because your body doesn't absorb it well. And then it's also not breaking it down well. It's not eliminating it. So you get an accumulation of stuff, and like our body will start to like panic. Our body will not respond well to it. So this is where you need to understand, like we still need to get some walking in. We still need to focus on improving the health of our mitochondria. We need to make sure we have enough muscle mass. We need to make sure that we're supporting our liver. Because if you give HRT to some people who are, or even this is where you see people like taking different fat loss drugs and stuff, if their cells are not healthy, to actually be able to use stuff and break it down, it can actually make them way worse. Like we've seen this where people have taken different weight loss drugs and it like completely puts them out for like 3 months. They're struggling. They feel sick. And so this is where you still need to do the basics of like eating enough, having enough sleep, doing the right kind of activity, the food timing, because you're not going to get the optimal results from it. And HRT on its own will not cause you to lose fat. Like that's not how that works. So you need to understand that it comes down to cell health. And so it can help with symptoms and stuff like that a ton and can help restore a bit of leptin sensitivity. But if you aren't doing these other things, like you're going to be hard pressed to really see and feel really big changes. And sometimes it can make people feel worse. So the next thing to talk about is blood tests to assess leptin resistance. Like if you want to get this tested, what are we looking at? So here are some key markers to test. We want to look at fasting leptin. So high leptin is greater than 12 to 15 and suggests leptin resistance, but it must be interpreted along other metabolic markers. Like you can't just take a single thing. This is why when people are like, oh, my labs were this. What does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. Like I need to know more about your health history. I need to know like other lab markers. I need to know your symptoms, because all of those things are really going to determine what the plan of action is. Like one number is not enough. It's not. And just lab work on its own is not enough. Like we need to be able to tie it. This is why when we do Dutch testing with people, we actually like ask them to fill out different assessments that we have to get a better health history, to understand the symptoms, what their body has been through, what their goals are, what their biggest struggles are, because it's not enough. Like I can't, like if you just send me your labs, I have no idea if you are feeling great, if you're not feeling great, what we're watching for, you know? The next thing you want to look at is fasting insulin and HOMAIR. So this is elevated insulin, and insulin resistance is often accompanied with leptin resistance. Usually those two things go hand in hand. We want to look at your fasting glucose and your H1C or A1C. So this helps assess, again, your blood sugar control and your insulin function. And so a lot of people will get their A1C, but we're not getting like fasting levels of their blood sugar, and your fasting blood sugar levels will tell us so much more. A1C can take so long to progress. So by the time your A1C is of an issue, you have been dealing with this for like years. And so this is why we want to make sure you're also taking your fasting glucose, because it gives us so much more insight in real time as to what's going on. And so this is something that's like, I like to always tell people, because A1C will take a long time to change, both on the way up and on the way down. So like when you are implementing changes, it can take like 6 months to a year before you even see a drop, right? Because it takes a long time. Fasting glucose is a better indication to catch things sooner and like monitor changes over time more frequently. Then we want to look at triglycerides to HDL ratio. So a ratio above 2.5 to 1 suggests some metabolic dysfunction. Your body's not very good at burning calories. Our fat burning pathways are likely blocked. Storage is likely happening. And this is usually seen with leptin resistance as well. High sensitivity CRP. So this measures systemic inflammation. We know inflammation will impair leptin function. It will block your fat burning. It will increase cortisol. It will shoot you into your storage pathway so fast, will lead to disease progression. And you can have inflammation for years with zero symptoms. Like we're talking like this could be an issue for 10 years and you have no idea. And so this is why when we're doing full assessments with everyone, we get so much health history from you, because based on what you tell us, we're like pretty sure if there's like an inflammation thing going on. So this is something that we always want to be aware of, because this is something that can go years without any indication that it's even a problem. And then we also want to look at reverse T3 and free T3, because leptin resistance, like we mentioned, can negatively affect your thyroid function, slowing down your metabolism, making it worse at burning calories. We see this also with high stress. We see this also with high inflammation. Sometimes liver can be involved too. Like there's a lot of things that can influence thyroid. And like I said, if you have leptin resistance, we're probably seeing something going on with thyroid. We're probably seeing something with inflammation. We're probably seeing something with stress. We know those things are going to cascade down and affect your ability to build muscle. We know it's going to affect your hormones. Like there are so many things. And so this is why like one thing is not enough. We got to zoom out and look at the entire body, because it's never just isolated. It's never like, oh, cholesterol is high. Cool. That can be from so many things. Stress is usually the biggest one. And people are like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, no, you're not. Like we're looking at your lab work and we know that you're not. And then you're also dealing with poor sleep and poor energy. Yes, there is stress there. So this is why it's important to pull everything together. So Chelsea, what are some lifestyle? We talked about nutrition and food timing. We talked about labs. What are some lifestyle changes that people can make to really help support leptin sensitivity? Because these things are super underrated. And people like want fancy stuff. They don't realize how much this stuff can make a difference.
Well, and it goes back to what you were talking about with the HRT too. And like, you need to be healthy on the cellular level, but you also need to have all of these healthy foundational things in place in order to see the benefits. It's the same with supplements, right? No supplement is going to be a magic pill. You need to have those healthy foundational pieces in place in order to actually reap the benefits from them. So the same is true for our leptin sensitivity. So first thing, strength training and exercise. So resistance training, 2 to 3 times per week, that's going to help to increase our insulin and our leptin sensitivity because it's going to help to improve our metabolic flexibility. So our body's ability to tap into those two pathways is going to improve with that resistance training. The other thing that we want to do is that low intensity movement. So these are things like walking, yoga, or any form of light cardio, because this is going to help to reduce inflammation and it's going to help to improve our blood sugar control, especially if we're taking those walks after meals. We also want to avoid excessive being the main word here, very excessive high intensity cardio, because this can spike our cortisol and worsen our leptin resistance. So again, this is where we're not ever giving one size fits all advice because everybody's body is different and everybody's body needs different things. For somebody who we think might be struggling with leptin resistance, we are going to say we're not doing any high intensity right now. We're going to avoid that completely. However, if we've done the work and we've gotten you into a really good place and your body is responding well and we're starting to see those things, then it could be a tool that we utilize to help you to tap into those fat burning pathways even more. Okay. The next thing is that we want to optimize sleep and that circadian rhythm. So we want to be aiming for those 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep because we know that poor sleep is going to increase our ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone that kind of works opposite to our leptin. And it's also going to make that signal to our brain from our leptin not as clear. It's going to get lost in translation and our body is not going to get that pathway. Steph's mentioned before, when she gets less sleep, she'll eat upwards of 300 extra calories, right? And it's because your body's being told, hey, we're starving, eat something, and then you eat and your body's not getting that message okay, whoa, we've had enough. We also want to make sure that we are reducing our blue light exposure at night to support proper leptin regulation overnight. And then we also want to wake up with natural light to help regulate our circadian-driven leptin release. So really prioritizing that morning sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, even just taking your coffee and your pre-workout snack outside for 5 or 10 minutes, getting that a little bit of sunlight or daylight. It doesn't even have to be sunlight because that's what people always say. They're always but what if there's no sun? And I'm it's just daylight. Honestly, just allowing your pupils to see that daylight is so beneficial. Okay, and then we've talked about this one, so I'm not going to harp on it for a long time, but managing that stress is so important. That chronic stress is going to increase our leptin resistance because it's going to raise inflammation and it's going to wreak havoc on our insulin. So we want to do those things like incorporating that breath work. So even 3 deep breaths, 5 deep breaths before you eat a meal. So important. If you are a meditation person, something like meditation could work well for you, and even just mindfulness practices to support that cortisol regulation. And then again, adaptogens such as ashwagandha or rhodiola can help to reduce stress-driven leptin dysfunction.
But if you're still go, and you're doing all the crazy things, and you're not eating enough, and you're skipping meals, and doing all the things, they're not going to do anything for you, right? So some other supplements that can help support that leptin sensitivity are going to be berberine. It activates that fat-burning pathway, improves insulin and leptin signaling. But this is only something you want to use short-term. And this is berberine had its it had its highlight, it had its moment, but you're not supposed to be on it all the time. That's not how this works. It's a very strong antimicrobial. So while it's helping you with your insulin and leptin signaling, it's also cleaning out some of the gut bacteria that you have and can lead to gut health issues down the road. So it is not meant to be on all the time. It is a short-term thing. Short-term. So if you've been on berberine for a long time, quit it. Okay? We need to work on some other things for you. Then we have fish oil, because that's going to reduce your inflammation and support leptin function. We have magnesium, which helps with insulin sensitivity and metabolic regulation. We have our alpha lipoic acid, so that's your ALA. It improves your glucose metabolism and leptin function, so it helps you use and break down carbohydrates for energy. We have foods that are rich in I was like, why am I putting an R in the middle there when it's not there? Sometimes you read stuff and you're just no, I don't like it. I'm going to change it to something else. Anyways, it helps support that fat burning activation, helps support and balance those metabolic pathways. So the push and pull, right? So things like red grapes, blueberries, cranberries, peanuts, pistachios, dark chocolate, amazing. And so Again, those things can help, but if you're not doing literally everything else we talked about, you're not going to see much for change, right? So those are things to be aware of. We do have a supplement guide that has a lot of those things in it with like links to things that we like to use here at Vitality. So if you want that, just message me and I'll send it over. So final takeaways about leptin is that it's a hormone that is made by your fat cells telling your brain we have enough stored. It's important for regulating your hunger, your metabolism, how good your body is at burning calories, and fat storage. When leptin levels are working well, you are going to have a better appetite. You're not going to be ravenous all the time. It increases energy use, which means your body is better at breaking down energy and calories to help you lose weight. And it signals your body that, hey, we have enough. We can burn fat. We don't need to store. We have ample amounts. Let's open our fat burning pathways and release this fat from our bodies. That's amazing. That's what we want. However, when leptin is off, the brain doesn't get that I'm full message. We're the kid on our iPad ignoring the parents yelling at them. Your hunger is going to increase. Your metabolism slows down. Your body gets worse at burning calories. That fat burning pathway becomes blocked. We see that we're overstimulating that storage pathway because your body is like, hey, we still need more food. Hey, we still need more food. Hey, we don't have enough. We must store whatever we have despite the fact that you're eating less and moving more. And then your body starts storing fat, particularly around the belly, which we definitely do not want, right? So to support our healthy leptin function, we want to balance our blood sugars, which means eating regular meals, 4 to 5 hours apart, with protein and fiber and healthy fats, having those carbohydrates last. Avoiding extreme dieting or carb overload. So we don't want to have like crazy copious amounts of carbohydrates, but most of you ladies aren't eating enough of those carbohydrates. So usually just make sure you have carbs at every meal. Have a potato. So good for you. Prioritize your sleep. It helps reduce leptin sensitivity. It increases your hunger hormones like ghrelin if we are not sleeping well. So like Chelsea said, if I'm not sleeping, I am eating like whatever I can get my hands on, I'm not having it. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to taste that good. Then we want to reduce inflammation. We want to have more omega-3s. We want to have colorful fruits and veggies, cutting back on those ultra-processed foods, including your quote-unquote health foods, the keto pancakes, the protein bars, the powders, the low-carb breads, the keto wraps. Those are all also ultra-processed. Just because the label says like high protein, low carb, that does not make it healthy. It's still highly processed. We want to make sure that we are managing our stress. We want to make sure we're eating enough food. We are actually taking time to slow down. Practice breathing. It's so good for you. This is going to open up your fat burning pathways, right? That's great. And this can happen without even having to drop your calories. How amazing is that? And then moving. We want to move throughout the day. Get some walking in. Do that proper strength training to improve that leptin sensitivity. And the bottom line really is leptin is your body's thermostat. When it works well, it will help open up those fat burning pathways. Release fat. Amazing. Regulates your appetite naturally, so you're not scavenging in your pantry all day. But when it's out of sync, it becomes a lot harder to lose fat. Blocks that fat burning pathway, overstimulates that storage pathway, no matter how disciplined you are, no matter how clean you eat, how much carbs you drop, how many calories you drop, how much you work out, doing all the right things, it doesn't matter. It makes it so much harder because it blocks that fat burning pathway and tells your body, hey, we don't have enough, let's store, despite the fact that you are not even eating that much. So restoring leptin sensitivity is going to be a key part in long-term metabolic health and being able to actually lose fat. So I know this was like a water hose of information. I am sorry, but we just get really excited. This is what happens on this podcast. And so you may need to go back and like listen to some stuff. I think we're going to try and make a guide or resource of some sort. I'm going to make sure to make some more content around this on my Instagram and Facebook. So you can head there with some like simple tactics in terms of like what to watch for and symptoms and, you know, things that you can implement and really break things down for you in smaller, more digestible chunks. But the key is if this is messed up, like you're going to really struggle to lose weight. So I hope this was helpful. This was great. And Chelsea, any parting words for the listeners?
The one thing I would say is just don't underestimate the power of stress here and like the role that stress can play in this situation. Like as you were talking, I was just thinking like we've had a pretty stressful week at our house with one of our daughters and like my hunger has been out of control and my satiety has been 0, right? And so it's just like taking those deep breaths before meals, putting your feet up at night, doing those stress management techniques are going to make a world of difference in helping to make sure that your body is getting that leptin signal.
Yeah, and people think it's just like how much can it really help? Like so much. You guys have no idea. So if you enjoyed this, if you want to learn more about all the different things that can block your fat burning pathways and tell your body, hey, we have enough, let's store despite eating less and moving more, and how that's affecting your body, particularly with our hormonal changes, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this with your friends. More people need to know about this. I'm going to be releasing a chapter of my book soon, just like a freebie for you guys to like get a little taste of it. So make sure you follow along so you can get access to that when we do release that. But if you have any questions, please let us know. And we love you so, so much. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.